all these people I was working with, most all of them were going to college, and they were getting degrees in psychology, and they were on drugs, they were promiscuous, they were party animals. And I like took a step back and I went, whoa, I better rethink this, because I don't want to end up like that.
Were you at a university at this point?
No, I was just working and deciding if I was going to enroll or not.
Okay.
Yeah. So I decided I'm going to go, on some road trips and see the U.S. and have some fun, and then I'll figure out what I'm going to do. So I did some wanderlusting, and out of the blue, I ended up getting a phone call from a friend of mine who had just gotten involved in some movement.
And how old were you at this time?
I was 19, almost 20, just a few months away from being 20. So funny enough, I was in Denver at the time, and I was working at the Denver Broker in downtown Denver. And I actually went up to my boss and said, I don't know how to explain this to you, but I need to leave, but I'll be back. Will I still have my job if I come back? He goes, you're a great employee. Of course you can have your job when you get back. So I actually put an ad on the radio, and the very next day I got a ride all the way back to Santa Barbara.
Oh my goodness.
A free ride.
Free ride from Colorado to California. That's incredible. That was back in the day.
Back in the day.
Safer to do such a thing.
Back in the day. And it wasn't just me and one other person. It was like four people. We were all like kind of ride sharing thing, right? Funny story though, on the way to Santa Barbara, we stayed overnight in Vegas, and this is before Vegas was built up. They had like their slot machines and gas stations and all this stuff, but they didn't have anything big. So first time I ever did the one-armed bandit, $200 worth of nickels pour out of the machine. It was like the first time ever. I just put it in and it went So I treated everybody to dinner and paid for our overnight stay, and then we headed to Santa Barbara. So I was feeling kind of lucky. You know? So then my friend and I meet for dinner, and everything he said just made sense, but he wasn't trying to push me. It's like he didn't care if I got involved or not, And he takes me to this lecture, and I was like, wow, this really makes sense. It just had so much ringing of truth in it. It just resonated with how I felt about life, and the whole movement that was involved in actually helping bring peace to the world and bring people together and whatever. And I was like, oh, what's not to like about that? And they weren't into drugs, they weren't promiscuous, they were this really good, clean group of people. So I finally felt like I found my people.
Yes. And then what'd you do?
Then I ended up joining staff out of the blue, and I just decided to make this commitment.
Wow. So you stayed in Santa Barbara?
Stayed in Santa Barbara for basically about 10 years. And I just kept on moving up the executive chain, and just kept getting higher up. And eventually I ended up becoming the executive director of the center there in Santa Barbara.
So you stayed with the same place?
Same in the same place. And then I ended up getting promoted, basically. And I ended up moving to Los Angeles into the hierarchy, where you have this very big commitment. I won't even tell you what the commitment is, because it's like overwhelming. It would probably shock most people, so I'm just going to zip it on that. But I'm just going to say that it was a very huge commitment.
Personally,
life, like you were dedicating virtually your entire life, and even future lifetimes into supporting this. And for the most part, we were on a base and with security guards, and we were being monitored pretty much 24/7. So,
wow. And at this point, you're 30 years old. You get moved to Los Angeles for a promotion, which you're probably happy about.
Yeah, I was thinking, it was the best thing to do, for the greater good and what have you. And I mean, there was other things that happened in between that made me make that decision to do that. But it's funny. The funny thing is you don't realize until you're on the outside of it, looking back, how brainwashed you are.
Right. And did your family reach out to you?
I stayed. I was in touch with my family the entire time.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, I never lost touch with my family. It's just that I didn't have the freedom basically I didn't have the finances to go and see them. They lived in Michigan. I lived, in California. It was really difficult to get away, and I just didn't have the finances to do trips, and they didn't have it either. So, I think in the years that I was in, I probably saw my family maybe 3 times on separate occasions, but most of my family I haven't seen until I actually got out.
And your siblings at this point were probably married, having kids, anything?
Well, one of them was married. The other one had kids but wasn't married. It was just a whole mixed bag.
Life was
they
just
had
happening.
all, But we had stayed in touch, but it wasn't like I had the freedom to see them and talk to them every time I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
But the other thing too that happened in the process of being there is the more I was in it and the deeper I got in it, the more I considered family insignificant.
Oh.
And I got into the frame of mind of like, who cares if I don't see them? Who cares if I don't watch it? It's a big deal. It's no big deal. Whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I just kind of.
Was it that same way with your other coworkers or peers that were in the same situation as you?
It was different with some of them because some of them, because it was LA and a lot of them were younger than me, and they came from Los Angeles and their families were also in it.
Mm.
They had that family unit because they were all on the same page. The parents were in the cult, the kids were in the cult, the parents were totally fine on their kids being on staff.
Oh, okay.
Or the flip way around, the parents were in and the kids were in.
Right.
Or in some cases, the parents were in, but the kids were out.
Right.
So it was a whole mishmash. But a lot of the people that were there on the base that I worked at were actually from Los Angeles, and they had family in Los Angeles. For them, it was not a big deal. They'd see their family pretty much every weekend.
So tell us more about your experiences in LA in the new position.
In the new position, I did a lot of traveling on what they called missions. I was a fundraiser for about 16 years, which is very, very intense. And I would travel. I even traveled out of the country.
Wow.
I went to Canada, went to Mexico, went to South Africa, went to Australia.
Wow.
Gosh, where else?
And were you always
went to England?
Did you have other guards near you at all times?
Oh yeah, for the most part, And the other thing is, you knew that you couldn't step out of line, so you were kind of like your own guard.
Mm-hmm.
Because there was like a lot of discipline. There was a lot of make your quotas, because no matter what your job was in the cult, you had certain quotas that you had to make. So I was a fundraiser. Let's just say, for example, that I had to make $30,000 or $28,000 in 1 week. That was divided up by day, and I had to make $4,000 every single day. So even if the week wasn't even anywhere near order, but I didn't make the 4,000 for that day, I was basically punished for it.
Wow.
Yeah, and that would include not being able to go to sleep until I made my target, having to go do menial labor in the galley, scrubbing floors, scrubbing pots and pans, taking out the garbage, whatever,
Wow.
And they considered it.
It almost sounds like Little Orphan Annie.
Yeah, they called it like the too gruesome to be faced. So that they had this whole thing of if a person has that threat hanging over their head of, if you don't do this, your punishment is this, then people would be more apt to comply. They didn't refer to it as a punishment, but that was in fact what it was.
Right.
Because you get to the point where you just go, I can't go another night without getting any sleep. I better kick butt. But more often than not, I didn't. Mm-hmm. And I got to the point where I was so tired of the whole thing, I even broke into tears and everything, and I just said, I just can't. I can just let me go. I can't do this anymore. I can't handle this pressure.
Is that how you left?
No. They consoled me, and we understand, let's see what we can do to help you fix this. So they started being more nice to me. you know. It all depended on who was my senior at the time.
Right.
But what finally got me to the point where I knew that my life was at risk, like severely, if I didn't get out, was I had some medical scares, and they were just very aloof about it. It's like I'd end up having to go to ER because they would not just send me to a regular doctor for the most part. I'd have to like be in severe pain for them to finally go, oh, well, I guess we better take you to ER. They take me to ER because you could stand in line at one of these UC, you know, college hospitals, university hospitals, and you could do the whole welfare thing, and they would check you in, and you didn't have to pay a dime, and there were no questions asked. You just fill out this form and wait in the waiting room until somebody's available, and it would usually be an intern that would interview you and do the checkout. And every time I'd go, I would basically be told, and we'd even be put in writing, you're stressed, you're not getting enough sleep, you're not eating properly, you're not getting exercise, you're playing havoc on your body, and that's why you're having the ulcers and the the GERD, you know, and all these other things. And then it just got worse and worse and worse, and eventually I ended up having to have a double bunionectomy in my feet. That took 10 years from the time I started having major issues with my feet. It took them 10 years to finally get me a surgery, and I was the one that had to line it up.
It must have been so painful to walk.
It was. They were like not going to approve it, and I was on the phone with somebody, and I had to call the headquarters and stuff, and she goes, I'm sorry, we just can't approve this, and you're going to have to work this out some other way. And I started crying on the phone, and I said, I can't take this anymore. I can hardly walk. I'm in so much pain. I just can't do this. And fortunately, the gal I was talking to on the other end went, I'm going to get off the phone. I'm going to go talk to somebody again. I'm going to call you right back. So then she called me back and said, okay, it's approved.
Wow.
Because I just finally you might as well just, you know, let me go and be done with it than put me through this anymore. I just can't do this anymore.
Wow. Well, your body was speaking loudly to you.
Oh, yeah.
Trying to cry out on behalf of you.
Yeah. So I got that done, and then they put me back on my feet before my feet healed. And so all the results of the surgery just went to hell. And then a few years later, I had fibroids, and I knew I had them, but I didn't realize that they were growing and growing and growing and getting worse and worse and worse and worse. And so I started having these horrific pains. And I mean, my periods were like I couldn't sleep. I couldn't even hardly walk. It was so painful. And so finally, back in 2008, I hemorrhaged. I got up one morning and I was like, I don't even want to describe it. It was so horrible.
Bleeding out.
And I actually called the person I was supposed to call. We have a medical officer there on the base. And I said, I am bleeding like horrifically to the point where we're having to go change my pad every 15 minutes.
Oh, wow. That's
and
scary.
I'm really freaking out. And you need to take me to ER. And what'd she say? Sorry, can't take it right now. This is Thursday and it's our week ending, and you're going to need to wait until the weekend and what have you. It was 8 hours later. I get taken to ER. She had to be the one to go with me, so nobody else could go. And the reason she needed to go with me is to make sure I didn't rat out the colt.
Right.
Because when they asked me point blank, what took you so long to get here? I looked at her and I looked at them and I went, I didn't know it was that bad. I lied right through my teeth. So fast forward, I end up being told I need to get a hysterectomy. I get that hysterectomy. I have to figure out how to pay for it. I had to fill out all these forms, and in the nick of time, I got approved, the finances approved for it. But before I could even do that, they wanted me to go to a cult doctor to get a second opinion.
Wow.
Here I am already
Your life's
told,
on the line.
My life's on the line.
Yes.
I'm being told we can't give you, they have to give me a hormone shot to stop me from continuing to bleed. And they said this is a one-time fix. we can't do this again. So you have to get your hysterectomy before you have your next period. Otherwise, we don't know.
You could bleed out.
You could bleed out.
Mm-hmm.
We would have no way of saving you.
How old were you at this point?
I was 53 or so.
53.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you were there for years. Yeah. So what happened afterwards? Was this your wake-up call?
It was. So what happens is I end up getting the surgery, right? And then I get put in a medical dorm because where I lived on the base, they had dorms. Mm-hmm. And if you weren't married, you were in a dorm with, it was not a co-ed, it was all females, me. They had bunks that were pretty much 3 or 4 high, all stuffed in small spaces, and you're no bathroom. There's bathrooms in the hallway that you have to go to if you need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
So you're living in this really tight spaces. Well, I had the luxury of getting in a medical dorm. It was just me and one other gal, not on bunk beds,
yes.
And I walk in and there's this gal I had been asking about for months, going, hey, you haven't seen Holly around. Whatever happened to Holly? And nobody would say anything. I open up the door and there's Holly with no hair on her head and a big tumor that looked like she was pregnant with triplets. And it turned out she had been dying of cancer and had maybe weeks at the most to live. And my wheels started turning and I'm looking at her and what have you, and I'm thinking, wow, I have no idea what the biopsy results are going to be from the surgery I just got. What if that was me?
Yes.
And how come they let this go this long? Because if you catch something early, if you are doing your, regular, the female exams and whatever, like you're supposed to, particularly when you get to a certain age, and she was older than me, you catch it.
Yes.
So I was just like, my head just spinning on this. And then she turns over and looks at me. She goes, if there's any regrets I have, it's that I haven't seen my family in years, and I probably won't see them before I die. And then it hit me. I went, her family doesn't even know she's dying.
Wow.
Whoa. And I thought, that could be me. Oh my gosh, that could be me. I cannot do that to my family.
No.
I mean, that's just crazy. So then my wheels turned and I started making my plan on how I was going to be able to get out, but it's difficult to get out. Mm-hmm. They put you through this entire regimen and they make it as difficult as possible for you to leave. So I also knew that I had another surgery I still needed to get.
Yes.
That was totally disrelated. Mm-hmm. But it was from an accident that I had. And they gave me a choice. You can either do the hysterectomy or do the thing, but you're not going to do both, even though the neck injury was covered by workman's comp. So how do you tell me that I have to take one or the other?
Right. Yes.
Right?
Wow.
When you're obligated
yes.
to handle this other one. But it wasn't a matter of either or, it was a matter of which one was a priority.
Right.
The most immediate one,
hysterectomy.
Was the hysterectomy, because when you do, I'm bleeding out, I'm not going to go get my neck surgery.
Yes.
So anyway, so I end up, that gets dragged along even after my hysterectomy. And finally, it gets so bad that I can't even work without having to have my arms up. I have to stand up to work with my arms elevated, because every time I put my arms down, my hands and my arms would go numb.
Oh, goodness.
And I had to sleep with my arms up.
And all this was from a neck injury?
Yeah. Mm. Yeah. So finally they send me, instead of to a chiropractor, which is what they did initially, they send me to a spinal specialist, and he was so concerned about the results. He's going over it with me and my medical officer who was there. He says, if I could do the surgery on you right now, I wouldn't even let you walk out the door. And he actually pointed and did the whole circles and everything. This is where we're at here. He says, you're like a hairline away from compromising your spinal cord.
Ooh.
In which case, if you do, you will probably be paralyzed for life. That's how bad this is. So
was the other person there who works on staff with you to hear the news?
Yep.
Okay.
And he wanted them to hear it too.
Yeah.
He says, so don't go skiing, don't trip and fall, do not jerk your neck. You have to be very, very, very careful to not put any stress on your neck right now because, and we need to schedule you as soon as possible to get this done. So long story short, we speed through it, and I think in a couple weeks or something like that, I ended up getting surgery.
After the hysterectomy?
After the hysterectomy. Okay. Hysterectomy was done, I think, in like July or something, June, July, and I had the neck surgery in October. So I'm recovering from the October surgery, and they're trying to push me to get back to work.
Of course. Sooner
than I'm physically able to do.
Yeah.
I still got the whole brace around my neck and everything and what have you. And I end up having a run-in with some senior executives who were just bullying me and just being really, really rude. And they were being quite threatening. Like one of them had just been to the headquarters in Florida and had come back with this whole new regimen and of how the staff were going to be punished if they didn't make their quotas, including standing them in a trash can, like a big dumper, and having the staff spray water at them.
Oh, wow.
In their full uniforms and stuff like that. And I thought of that, and I went, it's time to go. I'll be damned if anybody's going to treat me that way. Yeah. That's not happening. Mm-hmm. So my wheels turned, and fast forward, I ended up getting really sick and being contagious with something. I don't know if it was pneumonia, bronchitis, whatever it was. And I was in isolation. And then I knew I was better, but I hadn't caught up on my rest. And I knew as soon as I walked out that door, they're going to put me right back to work, and they were going to start doing the sleepless nights and the punishment and all that stuff. And I caught up on my sleep, and one morning I woke up, and this was like, I think in January of 2010, I woke up and I went, wait a second, I've been here with these people for 35 years and I've survived all of this.
Yeah.
I'm a survivor. Yeah. If I could survive this, I can survive anything.
Yes.
I am out of here.
Wow.
And so I figured out what I had to do is play the it's not you, it's me. Because if I was going to go out there and have a conversation and sit down with somebody that was the only person I was able to talk to was the master at arms. If I was to tell her, you people are awful, you're horrible, you're mean and cruel, and I can't take this anymore, they would have extended my stay.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But instead I went with the, I'm a ball and chain on your ankle. I'm just constantly having these medical issues, and I need to be on a medical schedule, and I'm not able to make my quotas, and we have all kinds of, arguments about it. And I think, you're just going to be better off without me. So they did this thing called a fitness board, and voila, they found that I was unfit.
Nice.
And I was like, yes.
Oh my goodness. So how did you come up with that? Like, I'm just curious, did you witness another person do that? Or
never.
You've never seen anyone
never
escape
heard
like
of it,
that?
But I had heard stories from people before about the bad boyfriend, that they know the boyfriend's really dangerous. Mm-hmm. And if they just bolt, that they'll be followed. But if they keep it really nice and civil and go, I'm really sorry, George, but I am so bad for you. Look, I just drive you crazy. I just think for your own good, we need to say goodbye to each other. And I still love you and everything,
yes.
But,
Wow. Okay, so you get released. How long did that take?
It took 6 months.
6 months.
They put me through the ringer. They put me through this intensive regimen of counseling. It was kind of, they called it a security check, right? Mm-hmm. Because they wanted to make sure that I didn't commit any crimes and I wasn't trying to leave because I was a bad person and had done something that I shouldn't have done.
Right.
Whatever, and surprisingly enough, they didn't catch me on the it's not you, it's me, mm-hmm. But they went at it for like 50 hours with me. We're talking like 2-3 sessions a week, 2 to 3 hours a day over a period of, that long. And finally I got permission to leave. But I had to write a program of how I was going to continue to contribute to the cause.
Yes. So you had to show and prove that you were going to do that.
Oh yeah, man, I'm going to be a good girl, and I'm this, and I'm that, whatever. But I still believed in it. See, at that point, I was of the frame of mind that the staff situation was bad for me, but the technology itself was still good, and the people were still good. It was just, I was not fit, especially being an older person and what have you. I mean, by the time I left, I was, I think, 54 going on 55. It's just like, I physically can't handle this anymore.
So what did you do when you got out? Because here you've never held a job outside of the base.
I knew people that had businesses that were in the cult. I wasn't going to say the word. Scratch that. That were in the cult. And a lot of people knew me just from fundraising. They were even people that I went and got donations from. So I was able to make calls to them and say, hey, I'm out now. And they had to get permission to hire me. They actually had to call the cult and make sure I was in good standing so that they could hire me.
Wow. So they did, and then you got a job, and
got a job, and I got another job, and then I eventually got. I was doing a job for the jewelry people in New York, and then had to do shows along the coast, and eventually I got to Florida, and then I'm in Florida. Basically, it was just to drop off the van, and then I was free to go and do whatever I wanted to do. But I decided to stay, and then I ended up getting hired by a cult company that they had cult members that owned it and worked there and whatever, that did counseling and coaching and management training for dentists and chiropractors and this and that and the other thing. So I ended up working for this particular company, and finally what happens that pulls me away from working there, because I loved the place. I was doing great. I even had the owners of the company pulling me to their office and say, man, you are doing amazing. Like, all the clients are just mad about you. They're just like, can't stop talking about how great a job you're doing. Thank you so much for your hard work. They're just like praising me up and down. But there was a method to their madness. They had another thing they wanted to add to what I was already doing. So next thing you know, one of the senior executives from the cult walks in, and it's explained to me how this is now going to be an additional function for me, that I have to get my clients that I coach and train, I have to get them to sign up.
Oh, for the cult.
For a special division of the cult.
Oh, goodness.
Right? And I'm thinking to myself, this is getting weird, because none of them even know that it's cult connected.
Yes.
And that I'm going to be the one they trust. They're using the fact that they trust me.
Yes.
To manipulate them. And I was having a really rough time doing it. And finally, over the Christmas holiday, where we're off for 2 weeks, I'm getting these insane emails from this executive from the cult, basically telling me what a lowlife I am and how dare I not make the quotas, treating me like I'm his employee or something like that. So I went and I held on to it. I had nobody to talk to until I got back, from vacation, and I walked into my senior's office, and I said, I need to show you something. And I showed her the emails and stuff like that. I said, I'm done with this. I will do my job that I was hired for, that I was assigned to, but I'm not putting up with this.
Yes.
Nobody is gonna railroad me and insult me, especially like over a holiday,
right? And
send me emails like this. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
So I was just like fuming. And they were trying to calm me down and everything, but they were getting pissed off at me because I was being so disrespectful to this cult executive. How dare you talk that way about Mr. So-and-so, you know, kind of thing. And I'm like, give me a damn break, you know? So I decided to quit.
It's probably the best thing for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And is that quit from like?
No, that was quit them.
Oh, okay.
But then some of the things that happened after that, this particular cult executive and other cult members, most of them fundraisers, kept coming to the building and like literally taking up office spaces and just making themselves at home. And they're starting to talk to the clients. And then one day we have a staff meeting that's only for staff members, and this cult executive, the one that was berating me, comes into the meeting and takes over the meeting.
Oh, wow.
And basically tells everybody in the room, including the people that don't even know what he's talking about because they're not cult members, that the only reason for our existence is to support the cult. He says this to the whole room, and I'm just sitting there going, wait a second, pinch me. Did I really hear this? Did this really come out of the mouth of that person? Am I dreaming?
Yeah, because you thought you escaped in LA, and
now I'm thinking, I can't get away from this thing.
Yes, is bigger than you thought.
Whoa. And that was the wake-up call, one of many, many wake-up calls that got me to the point where I finally, months after that, it opened my eyes. And because my eyes were open, I started seeing things that I hadn't seen before, things that I would just kind of go, no biggie, or it would just go over my head and I wouldn't even notice it. Just as an example, I was doing a course and listening to some some lectures of the founder for this cult. And these were like higher level, lectures that most new people to the cult would not listen to probably for years. It would be before they ever got to them. And I'm listening to this one particular lecture. And in this lecture, the founder basically, in so many words, said that Christ was a criminal. And goes on and on and on how about Christ was a criminal, he was a rebel, he was this, he was that, total con job, whatever words he used. And I looked at that, and I'm at heart, I was still Christian even though I was in the cult. I looked at that and I went, and these people that got me in are expecting me to get more people in. What's going to happen when they get to this lecture? Because almost anybody I'm going to have an association with and get to follow me and get into this cult is going to be Christian. And I'm like, what a farce. All this time I've been told we're all denominational, we accept people of all faiths, blah, blah, we have respect for all religions. And I'm like, what a crock.
Yes.
And then that turned me off. But there was a series of things that just built up and built up and built up. And then finally, the big deal was I had left that one job and I found somebody else who wanted to hire me. And she was a very, very, very well respected, even a medal award winner cultist. And she had this counseling technique that she had where she would actually help people that were recovering from cancer. And she had a great following, and she wanted me to be her U.S. representative. So I was like, oh my God, that's such a great idea. Well, then I find out that she resigned from the cult.
Oh.
And then if I got hired to her, then I would be expelled.
Oh.
So I decided, instead of just going along with it and go, oh, well, I guess there goes that job, I went, I just gotta know. I gotta know why she resigned. I just have to find out.
Yes.
So I'm on this other jewelry job, because I did that temporarily, right? And somebody was eavesdropping on my conversation, and I didn't know it. And I'm talking to her, and I'm saying, but Wendy, that court case, so-and-so lost. The Colt won the court case. And she goes, no, they didn't. I mean, what do you mean, no, you didn't? She goes, tell you what, when you get off the phone with me, watch, you can read the documents, the actual court documents are public. You can read them. And her testimony was recorded, and you can find that. And she says, no, I can't. So I go and I watch the testimony, and I almost fall out of my chair. Just like, are you kidding me? It turned out that she was one of these people that got sprayed down with a hose and what have you, and that happened to her. And
sounds like a concentration camp.
And that's what it was like, right? Because she was in the hierarchy, above the hierarchy I was in. She was based in this desert location in Hemet, California. And I'm listening to her testimony, and then all of a sudden, everything just kind of came together. I went, wow, now it all makes sense. They just are using us. We're pawns. They're just using us. We're free labor. We're committed. We're quote unquote religious volunteers. They've got tax exempt status. They've got religious recognition. So they get away with all this stuff because of the First Amendment rights.
Wow.
And I went, okay, that's it.
How old was that woman who you're talking about, who was on that court case?
I think she's about the same age I am.
You're, okay.
Yeah.
Wow. So how did you get clean from all of it?
Funny enough, I had already started finding people that had gotten out that knew me and I knew them, and we had already had relationships, and I didn't know they were out and they didn't know I was out, or I was in the process of getting out. And the next thing you know, these people were finding out that, and the word was spreading, hey, did you know she's getting out, or she's out now, or whatever. And this one particular couple that I adored, that really got along fabulously, invited me to where they lived for sanctuary. They just said, you can come and stay with us. We'll help you get a job. You'll have a safe haven. You can, be able to just kind of review everything and make your decision. Because at that point, I hadn't really made my decision yet. I was just kind of like, my world was rocked, because at that point, it was like 37 years in this thing. And I'm going, whoa, what the hell? How do I start over?
Yeah, that was your whole adult life.
It was like my whole life. It's like, for pretty much all I've done is work for this cult and then work for cult members. But I had worked in the food industry and the hospitality industry before I ever got in the cult. In fact, I worked at a restaurant in Santa Barbara, a couple of them, before I got in. And even in Denver, I worked at the Denver Broker, which was this amazing place. So I had that experience under my belt. So I was able to get work in that industry where I ended up moving to. And these people just really helped me, and they were friends and are still friends to this day.
Wow.
And they actually introduced me to books and that I had never ever heard of, because we were all focused on, we could only read the founder's materials. We could only listen to his lectures. We're not allowed to listen to anything else. People that made that mistake of doing that were ostracized. So I went, yeah, I like the idea of being able to think freely and read some other things. And funny enough, I was able to pick up, I'll just give you some examples of books. There was a book that was written in 1925, and her name was, I think, Florence Scovel Schiff or Smith or something like that. And it was called The Game of Life and How to Play It. The book is like this thin. I got more out of that one book than 37 years of all the stuff I read and listened to.
Wow.
In the cult. Just that one book, I was like, whoa, my like, the bells were just going off. And then I read The Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz, and I read The Fifth Agreement, and super simple. I was like, oh my God, this stuff is so simple. I mean, what am I doing? How did I get over here? 37 years of all this complicated things. It's all repetitious, and it's all mind control.
Wow.
So anyway, I've continued on the journey of just being able to find these precious little nuggets of things that just make sense.
Yes. And you've written a book.
And I've written a book.
Do you want to share a little bit with that?
Sure, yeah.
Let's share with our listeners here.
This is my book. It's called Belonging, My Transformation to a Cult-Free Life. I purposely do not say the name of the cult because they are extremely litigious, and I just really don't want that noise in my life.
Yes.
Quite frankly.
That static is unwelcome.
Exactly, it's unwelcome. But what the book is about, it's more geared towards how more people than you can imagine have had a cult-like experience. It doesn't mean that it was an actual cult, like a religious thing or a spiritual thing. It could be an abusive relationship. It could be an abusive personal or business relationship. It could be just about anything.
Yes.
So
what would you tell our listeners in situations like this where people from the outside would know looking in, but the person who's going through it doesn't know, and they don't know how to get out, like you were?
Yeah.
Can you give some advice?
What I can say is, don't doubt yourself. Follow your gut. There were so many times in that 37 years that my gut was telling me, you got to get the heck out of here. And I ignored it. And in getting out, I realized that I had given control by choice of my life over to the cult. So you need to maintain control of yourself. You need to know who you are. And if you have difficulty figuring that out, you should probably just go and speak to a friend, somebody that you can really trust, to get down to the roots of like, what is your purpose? What is your why? What are you here for? What's your life meant to be? And do not compromise. And don't lose respect for yourself. It makes me think of that song, Respect Yourself.
Yes. That's awesome, Kay.
Yep.
Thank you so much for sharing. This has been incredible.
All right. You're welcome. My pleasure.